Welcome to the Gentleman's Guide to Gaming and part 4 of Operation Rainfall, our They Came From Classified campaign that I'm currently running for members of my Patreon, one of many games I run for people on Patreon. If you want to be on that Patreon, head on over to patreon.com/Matthew Dawkins. They Came From Classified is an espionage game in the They Came From series, so it's like espionage movies, very cinematic game in nature. Our characters had arrived on the tropical island of Valverde, where they were trying to track down the super criminal Monte Carlo. That's his name, not the place. Monte Carlo is known, of course, for taking the shoes off of his victims and affixing them to the stump of his right arm. His hand had been amputated after a fight with Ophelia Knightley, and he has subsequently replaced his hand with the stiletto that she lost during their clash. Now, at the start of our game, Ophelia is actually dealing Monte Carlo into a game of blackjack when he recognizes who she is. He tries to impale her hand with the stiletto heel that he has in place of his hand, but it hits the padded edge of the table. She reacts fast, slamming his head into the felt and the slate underneath, escorting the dazed hench person away. She extracts the stiletto and basically, I'll have that back, thank you very much. Meanwhile, Davina Stryker and Frank Davenport, so Agent Stryker and Mirage, were being questioned by Claudia Las Vegas in her penthouse suite, which was riddled with arts, antiquities, and jewels and the like, as to their allegiance and whether they were truly villainous, as they were making out. To test their villainy, she asked for a debtor from the casino to be brought up to them to be fed to the deadly piranha fish. Now, Davina Stryker responded, we've already seen people be fed to deadly piranha fish. So she said, failing that, the giant killer squid that I have in my marina outside of the casino. They had to concede they'd never seen someone be killed by a giant killer squid before, so they headed to the marina, where in the absence of Monte Carlo, which they really direly wanted brought up to the penthouse at this time, James Bind, a frequent thorn in their side, started parachuting in to the casino with his Union flag parachute, either to save the day or take out our investigators, our spies. Keep in mind that they believe James Bind was trying to assassinate them earlier. So, Frank and Davina grabbed some harpoons along with Claudia Las Vegas, the mastermind, villainess of Valverde, and started shooting harpoons up at James Bind. Every single one of them hit. They did things like purchase the critical trick at this point. It was really quite brutal. And so not only was his parachute shredded, his body was as well. He fell into the water where he wrestled the giant squid before bubbles rose to the surface. Happy with their villainy, Claudia Las Vegas took them back to her penthouse, which was now filling with gas for a reason. You see, Agent Yeager, meanwhile, who was on the casino floor, he had knocked out the chief of security down there and taken his uniform, where the general security guards in the casino wear black suits with gold piping. The head of security was a gold suit with black piping, naturally. He took the uniform so he could assist Ophelia in escorting Monte Carlo to the doors, passing him off to another guard as he did so. He then took the penthouse elevator up to the penthouse while the guards were distracted with Monte Carlo's, shooting, which we'll get onto in a second. He got up there, started pilfering some jewels, but as he did so, the alarms went off, the doors locked down, and a deadly gas started pumping into the penthouse room. Luckily, he spotted the golden egg of Mantumbo up there. Yes, I know this is ridiculous, but this is a game that They Came From Classified, which is well known for its air filtration abilities. So he slammed it over his head to find himself able to breathe in this tomb. He dove into a set of clownfish-coloured gowns because Claudia Las Vegas loves outfits that resemble the many exotic fish in her marina, and pretended to be an egg as guards hammered on the elevator doors. Meanwhile, Claudia Las Vegas deactivated the gas attack and alarm. Stryker, Mirage, and Las Vegas entered the penthouse, and Las Vegas noticed some of her art and jewels were missing. Agent Yeager had stolen them. She accused Striker and Mirage, of stealing them or being distractions, during which distraction, suitably enough, Jaeger knocked her out with the golden egg. Her harpoon misfired, hit a stuffed polar bear, and so the gas started pumping in again. Our spies rushed for the elevator, which they then realised was empty. Very curious. There were guards in here. They were hammering on the doors. As they looked around, they realised they were stood in about 1.5 feet of ash. Then an automated Claudia voice told them that they were intruders, trespassing, and that the disintegration lasers in the elevator ceiling would soon neutralise all of them as they lacked the requisite poker chips. Thankfully, again, I know this is probably quite hard to follow, but keep up with it. Thankfully, Agent Jaeger, if you recall from the previous session, had taken many, many, many poker chips from the security guard he'd clubbed before, picked the pocket of before, and so he was presenting them frantically. Is this poker chip the right validation? Is this one? Is this one? And due to a remarkable stroke of luck and some good dice rolling, after fumbling poker chips all over through these ashes, they displayed their credentials and were granted a reprieve. And some free drinks. They took their free drinks tokens, picked up some drinks. Jaeger sent some guards to investigate each floor to clear the way. Bear in mind, he was dressed as the head of security. Guard number 4, because that's how he'll be credited in the credits, reached Monte Carlo's room, which you might recall in the last session was rigged with a density of plastic explosives and triggered the detonation. Now, before this all happened, Ophelia was escorting their target, Monte Carlo, out of the casino via the main doors. And in doing so, they were confronted by another guard. Agent Jaeger had pushed Monte Carlo into his hand, said, "You deal with him. He's a debtor. He didn't pay his blackjack fee." And so they laid out the rubber sheets and blew his kneecaps out. All the while, Ophelia was flirting with the guard who was gunning him down. She was dressed as a croupier at this time, you might recall from the previous session. So, with Monty's knees successfully blown out, she decided she would take him down to the house doctor in the tunnels beneath the casino. This is where she met up again with Agent Priscilla Kay and Sylvia, the old lady that they'd been dragging around with them. Having to avoid guards, they had been avoiding guards on the 4th floor, making their way through the hotel, doing a bit of a Solid Snake sneaking mission, diving into a stairwell, knocking a dumbwaiter aside, an actual dumbwaiter, barreling to the ground floor. That's where they met up with Ophelia and took Monte Carlo to see Dr. Death. Dr. Death is the hench person in charge of medical in the illicit casino. Yeah, I wouldn't want to see him either. He only has craft supplies, he doesn't have anything medical related, but did his best to aid Monty as he was losing blood. While he was doing so, more guards showed up. Agent K, she pushed one of them into a chasm which just so happened to appear nearby due to the successful use of a cinematic, creating a shield with her suitcase trope. She has a suitcase that can be used to create any gadget at any time to protect herself from the gunfire of another, but the gunfire ricocheted and Sylvia was sadly shot through the chest. Dr. Death could only save one of them, Sylvia or Monte Carlo, and the group of spies chose Monty. He was, after all, their meal ticket. He was the only way they could get back home. Sylvia died while being offered to become a Frankenstein's monster with Monte Carlo, or a human centipede. It wasn't terribly clear. So Monte Carlo was disguised after he was constructed some papier-mâché prosthetic legs, and he was escorted to the Dissident Hotel just as the casino was exploding in the distance. The spies interrogated him and discovered that Big X, way back in the first session, was leaking information to Leo, that's Frank Davenport, Agent Mirage's former girlfriend and X's secretary, and that she was leaking it in turn to Phantom, the evil organization, via Monte Carlo. Phantom, however, wants Monty dead because they hold him responsible for Big X's murder, despite the fact he didn't actually kill Big X. He was a very good information source, you see. He's not responsible, and so the party doesn't know for sure, but they're fairly certain that Auntie, until recently Big X's second-in-command, is responsible for his death, and that Leo is the leak. So now things are going to get personal. They planted a tracker on Monty. Instead of killing him, they want to know where he goes and who he reports to. And this is where our session ended. If it feels like a lot happened in that session in quick succession, that is true, it did. A good 3 or and a bit hours of They Came From Classified play, jumping all around the casino, setting off explosions, getting in gunfights, feeding people to deadly killer squids, shooting James Bind out of the sky. We had a post-credits scene where James Bind was probably riding the giant squid off into the Atlantic. We'll have to find out whether that actually happens. They Came From Classified is a game that is absolutely filled with manic action. It is superb for that. Not just the cinematics and the tropes, but it is something that really facilitates that kind of play. So if that's the kind of game you're interested in, I very much recommend checking it out. I will link it in the video description below. And thank you so much for following along on the They Came From campaign. We will have to see if there's another part. I've opened it up to the players. Now that they've finished Operation Rainfall, they need to decide whether they want to carry on with Classified or whether they want to try a different They Came From or a different game entirely. We will have to find out. But until then, thank you very much for watching.